Prayers.
Let us pray, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for your presence with us here today as we deliberate on matters of national importance. We ask that you would guide our discussions, that we would be respectful to each other in our presentations, and that you would help us to be grateful to you for the honor which you have afforded us to serve in this capacity. We thank you for your grace and your mercy toward us, and we ask that you would continue to be with us as a nation during this period of our independence celebrations. We give you thanks for what you've done with us over the past 4+ decades, and we are grateful and confident that you will continue to guide us as we go forward. We give you thanks for these and other mercies. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Motion for the approval of the order paper as circulated.
I recognize the member for Nevis 3.
Madam President, I rise to move a motion for the approval of the order paper as circulated.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Nevis 1.
Madam President, I rise to support the motion that the order paper as circulated be approved.
Thank you. The question is that the order paper as circulated be approved. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Messages from the Deputy Governor General.
We receive no messages.
Announcements by the President.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our honorable members in the House. Good morning to our Deputy Speaker in the National Assembly, members in the gallery, and members of the general public viewing and listening on radio. We thank you for being here today. I have a few announcements or notices. Firstly, on behalf of the clerk, the staff at the Legislature Office, myself and my family, I wish to formally extend greetings to all members of this House and the citizens and residents of the island of Nevis and our Federation on the 42nd anniversary of the independence of St. Kitts and Nevis. Between 1983 and now, we have advanced much, and in keeping with our theme for this year, we continue to strive towards a sustainable future. May we all individually and as members commit to this endeavor as we occupy the esteemed offices which we currently hold. Secondly, I wish to extend formally on behalf of the Nevis Island Assembly, which I believe I could confidently say I do, express condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues on the passing of His Excellency Sir Edmund Wickham Lawrence, GCMG, OBE, CSM, JP, the third Governor General of our nation. And I would wish for us to extend such support as we can to all who mourn his loss and for his immense contributions to our nation. At the end of the sitting, or toward the end of the sitting on the adjournment, I would appreciate if we could observe a moment of silence in his honor. Thirdly, and in relation to matters more locally in the House, sometime last year, perhaps around the time of the budget debates, we would have had notices in relation to our attempts to incorporate or improve the efficiency of our Hansard reporting. And in this vein, in an effort to continue that improvement, the clerk and I have had discussions with respect to one, reduction of paper in the House. We are looking at our standing orders to ascertain whether it is a measure that can be implemented without any legislative amendments. That would be the ideal way that we would wish to go. And additionally, we want to confirm the successful use of the AI software we used on the last occasion during our budget debates for our Hansard reporting. That was a test phase, and we are proposing to have that software being used for all sittings going forward to assist in the timely preparation of our reports for our sittings. In terms of our mandate on education and our youth parliament, from 13th October, we will be accepting or opening the process for new cohorts for our youth parliament and to begin the rotation for 2025-2026. Forms will be posted and more information can be obtained from the legislature office. With your support, members, we are also hoping to engage some of our current youth parliamentarians in a pre-budget tour, which would be a series of brief engagements to further cement their understanding of the lawmaking process and government finance. We will reach out to members for your further assistance and to schedule some brief sit-downs or sittings where they can understand more about the debate on the appropriation bill prior to the relevant time. And finally, as you're aware, as a lawmaking body in the Commonwealth, we are a branch of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and a part of the regional body which represents the Caribbean, the Americas, and the Atlantic region. We recently participated in our regional meeting to dialogue on ways to maintain the democracy of our parliaments within the standards of the Commonwealth which we observe. As your president, I accepted a nomination to serve as one of the 3 representatives from the region on the executive body of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, which is vested with the authority and power to control and manage the association. We will meet in Barbados in October. These are all by way of announcement. Thank you.
Papers to be laid. Questions?
I recognize the member for Nevis 4.
Good morning to you, Madam President, members on the government side, those in the gallery. Madam President, thank you for the opportunity to rise regarding questions. Just this morning, Madam President, I received correspondence from the member for number 2, which would address the question that I had indicated to be asked. I seek your guidance as to whether or not I should still ask the question. I suspect he would respond with the correspondence that he provided to me this morning.
Thank you. Per the rules of the standing order in relation to questions, the form in which we received the question included an asterisk, which then requires an oral response to be given in the House. So we'll now have an opportunity, once the question is put, for the oral response to be given.
Thank you, Madam President. Question for member for Nevis 2 reads as follows. Does the Nevis Island Administration plan to establish an independent oversight body and/or develop regulations to facilitate implementation of the Special Sustainability Zone Act on the southern side of Nevis?
I recognize the member for Nevis 2.
Good morning, Madam President, and good morning to colleagues on this side of the House and the member opposite. I'm grateful for the question. The short answer is yes. We intend to establish an independent oversight body, and we have already invited members opposite to nominate a member to that body. In relation to do we intend to develop regulations, regulations are ordinarily developed on the legislation. Since this legislation was not passed in this Island Assembly, but rather at the federal level, it is not and would not be appropriate for the NIA to develop regulations to a federal bit of legislation. But on the first aspect of it, the legislation under Section 9 gives us the authority to appoint an independent oversight body, and we have already activated that. Thank you.
Thank you, members. I recognize the member for Nevis 4.
Thank you, Madam President. Question for the member for Nevis 1. The question reads, pursuant to the provisions of the National Assembly question for the member for Nevis 1. Has the Department of Physical Planning and Environment issued an acceptance letter for the Environmental and Social Impact Assessment Report and a detailed development permission letter for the Vance W. Armory International Airport Expansion Project? Thank you.
I recognize the member for Nevis 1.
Good morning, Madam President, and good morning to colleagues on this side of the House. Good morning to the member opposite. Good morning to persons in the gallery. I want to thank the member for Nevis number 4 for that question. And Madam President, the Department of Physical Planning and Environment has not yet issued an approval, as there are some outstanding issues on the ESIA, report which is being addressed. We anticipate that these will be addressed speedily. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, members. Member for Nevis 4.
Thank you, Madam President. This question is for the member for Nevis 1. At the Franklin Brown Community Center, St. James Parish, on July 7th, 2025, Minister Brand stated, "We have some concerns about the actual quality of the water. We are treating it as much as we can. We are using a little bit of it, but we are not necessarily utilizing as much of it as we used to before. What are the concerns that the Ministry of Water Services have regarding the quality of water from the Camps Spring?" Thank you.
Member for Nevis 1.
Once again, I want to thank the Honourable Member for Nevis number 4 for that question. And Madam President, the long-standing concern regarding the quality of water from the Camps Spring has to do with the possibility of foreign surface contaminants, such as leaf particles. And to this end, to ensure public health and safety, the water has been chlorinated at 2 stages. Firstly, there is a pre-chlorination process that is done as the water enters the Camps tank. Then once the water is pumped into the new tank, it is chlorinated a second time at the point of discharge. This is done, Madam President, to ensure that the Nevis Water Department delivers water to the public that meets World Health Organization standards. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Statements by ministers.
I recognize the member for Nevis 3.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and I rise and I say greetings and good morning to all in this honorable House. Just wanted to provide a brief update on the statements by ministers with regards to my ministry. I just want to briefly report on 3 particular areas. First, in agriculture, I just wanted to inform the honorable House and of course those listening and viewing that we here on Nevis would have received a delegation from Anguilla in the final week of August, and the delegation from Anguilla, they were here to observe what we are doing in agriculture on the island of Nevis. Of course, we have said in the past that what we are doing here on Nevis is catching the eyes of our colleagues in the neighboring islands. And as a matter of fact, we would have had a delegation from Anguilla that visited last year. And then we now had a follow-up delegation that visited this year in the, as I said, the final week in August. The delegation was here for 2 days. They overnighted, and they would have visited, in my absence, they would have paid a courtesy call on the Premier. And of course, they would have visited farmers, and they would have visited various installments at the Department and the Ministry of Agriculture. I want to say how grateful we are that we are indeed doing good things in agriculture. And it's because we are doing good things in agriculture, that is why persons from the neighboring islands continue to visit us. They continue to observe what we are doing, and they are trying us, of course, to take pattern from what we are doing. There is not as much agriculture that takes place in Anguilla, and so they are intending to increase and improve the industry in Anguilla, and in doing so, they want to take pattern from what we are doing here on the island of Nevis. Madam President, in the area of culture, I just want to say that we, of course, would have celebrated our Culturama Festival from July the 24th to August the 5th under the slogan, Nevision Pride Second to None, Culturama 51. I must say generally, Madam President, that the festival went extremely well. And I, as the Minister of Culture, am particularly pleased with the way things unfolded for the festival. I think generally it was, until the final day, until last lap, relatively accident and incident free, until we had some unfortunate incidents on the final evening. I want to place on record my gratitude to the planning committee, the Culturama committee, for doing an extraordinary job in putting the festival together. I want to once again congratulate and thank the patron for the festival, Mr. Halstead Suti Byron. I want at this point as well to place on record my commendation and congratulations to all of the winners of the festival. And not only the winners, I also want to commend and thank all those who participated in the various activities, the various shows during the festival. I also want to say thanks to the health team from the Alexandra Hospital. Of course, our security forces would have done an extraordinary job in keeping us safe and ensuring that revelers and all who went out during the festival felt safe during the festival as well. Of course, we are indebted to our sponsors, and I want to say special thanks to our sponsors for once again coming on board for Culturama 51. We are looking forward to your support again for Culturama 52. And of course, we want to thank all who would have come out and supported the activities. Thanks to those from Nevis, thanks to those from St. Kitts, thanks to those from the diaspora. We are eternally grateful for your support. Of course, unless you come out and support activities, activities could not be as successful as they were. I also want, of course, to thank the Cabinet of the Nevis Island Administration and the NIA in general. Of course, we know that Culturama is something that is a festival that is sponsored and supported primarily by the Nevis Island Administration and funded by the Nevis Island Administration. And so, of course, hats off to the NIA for once again stepping up to the plate and ensuring that we have a festival that we can be proud of. I want to say that I was pretty pleased with the way the shows in particular unfolded. I think there has been a concerted effort in terms of improvement in the management of the activities, improvement in terms of the start time for the activities, and kudos to all of the committee members, all of the subcommittee chairs for doing an excellent job. And I must say as well that I'm pleased to announce that all of the prize monies for the winners of the various activities have been paid out. And so all of the winners have already collected their winning prize monies. And once again, I want to say thanks to the NIA, the Ministry of Finance, for assisting us where that is concerned. Madam President, Culturama 52 will be celebrated from July the 23rd until August the 4th, and things are already in gear where that is concerned. And I want to announce that the Culturama Secretariat is currently accepting entries for the Culturama 52 slogan competition. Slogans submitted for the Culturama 52 slogan competition should be short, original, creative, and catchy, no more than 8 to 10 words, to capture the true spirit of Nevis's Culturama Festival. Slogans used by any other festival or carnival committee will not be accepted. All entries must be submitted to the Culturama Secretariat, Cotton Ginnery Mall, Charlestown, by Friday, October the 31st, 2025. Alternatively, entries can be emailed to slogan@culturamanevis.com. Please note that entries will not be accepted over the phone. And of course, the winner will receive 2 complimentary passes for all Culturama 52 ticketed events, a plaque, and a cash prize of EC $500. I must also indicate that registration is also open for all of the pageants for Culturama 52. And so, once again, we say a hearty thank you to all who made Culturama 51 successful, and we look forward to seeing all for Culturama 52. The final thing I want to report on, Madam President, is CariFesta 15 that was hosted in Barbados from August the 22nd to the 31st. And of course, Madam President, CariFesta is the Caribbean Festival of Arts. It's normally organized by CARICOM, and it is normally hosted every 2 years. The last CariFesta that was hosted in 2019. That was hosted in Trinidad and Tobago. And then it should have been hosted in 2021 by Antigua and Barbuda. Of course, we know, however, the unwelcomed visitor, COVID, came along, and so it could not have been hosted in 2021. And then we had a hiatus where we had a few years when it was not hosted. Antigua apparently could not host because of financial constraints, and so Barbados stepped in and would have hosted the festival this year in 2025. Now, Madam President, CariFesta is all about bringing the Caribbean together and countries beyond the Caribbean together to showcase their culture, to showcase their art forms, various aspects of art, literary art, visual arts, dance, drama, music, poetry, culinary arts, all the different arts, Madam President. And of course, it gives artists in the Caribbean an opportunity to showcase their talent, to showcase what they're doing, and of course, to make connections and links with other artists from the Caribbean. St. Kitts and Nevis normally take part in CariFesta. As the Minister of Culture, this is my second CariFesta. I would have attended CariFesta in Trinidad and Tobago in 2019. And so the Federation normally takes part, and I'm pleased to say that the Nevis Island Administration would have funded part of the delegation, of the federal delegation, to participate in CariFesta for 2025 in Barbados. The Nevis Island Administration would have funded 17 persons. I must say that 30 persons from Nevis attended CariFesta, but the Nevis Island Administration, with its not-so-deep pockets, was able to fund 17 persons. So commendation to the NIA for funding 17 persons to CariFesta. And so as part of the St. Kitts and the Nevis delegation, the persons from Nevis who attended, I attended as the Minister of Culture. We had the CEO from the NCDF who attended. We had one Mokajambi. We had one camera and video person. We had 13 persons from the Honeybee String Band. We had steel pan players. We had vocalists. We had students and teachers. We had a visual arts individual as well. And so Nevis was very well represented at CariFesta. I must say here, Madam President, that normally the Nevis Island Administration is very strategic in terms of, because we are limited in terms of our finances, we're very strategic in terms of the contingent that we sponsor to go to CariFesta. And as I indicated, we would have sponsored 17. The main act from Nevis for CariFesta was the Honeybee String Band. Main reason, Madam President, the Nevis Island administration normally try to send a cultural act or cultural group that we think could be very impactful at Carifesta. In 2019, we decided to send the Masquerade. And of course, we know that the Masquerade, they were excellent and very impactful in 2019. We don't have a lot of masqueraders throughout the Caribbean. This year, we decided to send the string band because string band is an art form that is not very well known in the Caribbean. As a matter of fact, the string band from Nevis was the only one of its kind that was there at Carifesta. And we had numerous countries, not only from the Caribbean, but from around the world, who were there. But the string band was the only one of its kind, and they were very impactful at Carifesta. And so I want to thank the NIA, thank the federal government, and thank all who are part of Nevis and the Federation being a part of Carifesta, and for the Nevis and St. Kitts and the federal delegation being that impactful. During the festival, each Caribbean country normally hosts what is called a country night. And St. Kitts and Nevis's country night was hosted on Saturday, the 30th of August. We were the last to host our country night, and I guess they left the best for last. Because based on what we would have heard, and based on what would have been on show there on the country night for St. Kitts and Nevis, it is obvious that St. Kitts and Nevis stamped its dominance at Carifesta. And so I want to commend all of the persons from the delegation from St. Kitts and Nevis who attended Carifesta. I want to say a special thanks to CARICOM for organizing, Dr. Hilary Brown and her team, to the Barbados government that did an outstanding job in hosting the festival, in hosting us, to Ms. Carol Roberts and Prime Minister Mia Motley and the entire team there, all of the liaison officers. When I was in Barbados, I was hearing that the Barbados government may have to spend as much as $20 million to host the festival. It's a very expensive venture to host, and so high commendation to the Barbados government for stepping up to the plate and ensuring that Carifesta was hosted, Carifesta 15 was hosted, and artists from throughout the Caribbean and further afield were able to be a part of that festival. And of course, it was hosted under the theme Caribbean Roots, Global Excellence. And so, Madam President, that is all what I have to report for today. May it please you. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the honorable nominated member, Minister of Health itself.
Good morning, Madam President. Colleagues on the government side, opposition members of the gallery, those listening and viewing online. I will not be long this morning, Madam President, but I think I actually mean that when I say it. I hear my colleague snickered because it's not a true testimonial when politicians say that in general, but I will keep my word. So I would like to begin by extending some independence greetings to all the citizens and residents of the beautiful Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis. We are celebrating 42 years of independence this year, and I believe that the country has definitely transitioned through different periods over time. I was not so privileged to witness the inaugural independence, but I can definitely see the transformation over the years, from growing up in villages where most individuals had outhouses and you had to utilize the community pipes and bathrooms, etc., to now a more modern society as we push towards the future and sustainability, where everybody is upgrading in all aspects of their lives. You have more individuals moving towards indoor plumbing. It's so, I don't want to undervalue the struggle that it took to get from where we started to where we are. And there is so much further that we can go as a country, and we have to remain open-minded to the possibilities that will help us advance not only the island of Nevis, but the future of the Federation as we push towards sustainability, which we know is a core tenet of this year's independence theme. So once again, a happy independence to all, Madam President. I will transition slightly to some updates from my ministry. In the month of October, we will be celebrating Month of Older Persons. And we know that earlier this year would have announced that Nevis, Charlestown, would have been identified as the only and first age-friendly city designated by PAHO and the WHO in the Eastern Caribbean. So we continue to work to live up to that reputation and live up to that award, Madam President. As such, under the theme, Older Persons Driving Local and Global Action, our aspirations, our well-being, our rights, 2025, the Department of Social Services, through our Seniors Division, will be hosting a number of activities to engage our seniors as well as members of the public to interact more with our seniors to ensure that they are not forgotten, not hidden away from the rest of society, but their values can be appreciated and celebrated. As such, we begin all things in our Federation with a word of prayer. And we're going to continue that for Seniors Month. And so they will be beginning the month of activities with a church service at the First Baptist Church at 10:30 on Sunday, October 5th. So all members of the public are, of course, invited to join us. Other highlighted activities will include a Moonlight Lime, our You Are Not Forgotten Awards, which we give back to seniors who were integral in contributing to the Nevisian public. Our health fair and exhibition, Creativity in Galore, will be one for the books. That will be mostly a sporting activity at the ETW Park, and that is on Thursday, the 16th of October. We will also be having a community day where we engage different schools and our students to bridge that generation gap. We will also be having the first edition of Seniors Got Talent, and Madam President, our seniors have talent. They can dance, they can sing, they can model, they can play the steel pan, they can play the saxophone, so I encourage all members of the public to purchase tickets to come and support our seniors on the 22nd of October. You can feel free to follow our Department of Community Development as well as our Social Services Seniors page for the full calendar of events. Similarly, in the month of October, we have a lot of things that we're raising awareness on in October. So we'll also be celebrating World Mental Health Day in October 2025. Yes, so we also have quite a number of activities. And I say, Madam President, we'll have to split our church services on Sunday, October 5th, because we will also be launching Mental Health Week with a word of prayer at the United Pentecostal Church, Marion Heights, on October 5th. Some key events that they will be having, Madam President, is the Bank of Nevis and Taiwan ICDF health screening, and I highlighted that one in particular to encourage our citizens and residents to continuously get assessed, know your numbers, understand that screening is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than treatment, as the screening aspect can help to prevent the development of any future ailments. Madam President, they will also be engaging the family members of individuals who suffer with different mental health challenges, as this group of individuals, that support structure is often undervalued and unsupported within our society. So we're helping to give them the support system and the tools to be able to maintain their mental health as well. Madam President, while I'm up, I will also like to take this opportunity to congratulate our MUA and NIA scholarship holders for 2025. And those went to Mr. Kamani Hanley and Ms. Lakeisha Rogers, who are currently studying cybersecurity and pharmacy, respectively. And on that note, I want to encourage more individuals to look into what that scholarship has to offer It is a comprehensive scholarship, and I'm encouraging more of our young persons to access those possibilities as well as other scholarships that are being granted through the NIA. Madam President, we're also on the topic of education, so I want to congratulate the participants of our RISE program through social services. We are heading into phase 5, and in the phase 4 section, Madam President, individuals often sign up to CXC subjects in an attempt to advance their careers, their lives, their potential earnings. And so 9 individuals would have sat CXC examinations, and 8 would have successfully passed their subjects, Madam President. And 1 would have passed with a grade 1 with distinction. So we continue to show support all through the Ministry of Health, Gender Affairs and Social Empowerment, and we will continue to operate as a people-centered ministry. Before I close, Madam President, I believe I was dishonest with my timeline to begin with, but I'm going into becoming a real politician, it would seem. Madam President, I also want to shed some light on a new project that we are executing now at the Solid Waste Management Corporation. That is our scrap metal project. We have partnered to bring in a baler that is able to crush the white goods that we have there, a lot of the old vehicles, a lot of the fridge, those type of items, and those will be crushed, compacted, and shipped out of the island. That is the first phase of the project. We will also be advancing back into the community where we will be trying another cleanup activity to get a lot of the derelict vehicles off of the streets, out of abandoned properties, because these vehicles are vectors for rodents. They are also places where criminal elements hide drugs, guns, different contrabands, Madam President. So we're asking the general public to cooperate when we reach out in order to clear their areas of these different goods, Madam President. It is an all-of-society approach, and I just want to be able to encourage all of us to do our part. I will close by putting in a congratulation as well to the Charleston Secondary School, who is celebrating their 75th anniversary. And I know they'll be having a production on Saturday, their 1A12 production, so I encourage the citizens and residents of Nevis to go out and support that event, as most of us, a large population of us, would have attended that school at some time or the other. So thank you, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Nevis 1.
Madam President, I rise to make what I hope will be a very brief intervention under the agenda heading of statements by ministers. And Madam President, I believe that it is important for me to inform this House and the public of my recent attendance at the New Energy 9th Caribbean Infrastructure Forum, or CARIF 2025 in Miami, from September 16th to the 17th. I was privileged, Madam President, to sit on 2 panels. The first was a ministerial talk on the topic infrastructure as a driver of economic growth. Madam President, I was joined by a representative from Barbados, from Belize, and this discussion was chaired by a representative from the world-renowned company of KPMG. We looked, Madam President, at national infrastructure priorities and flagship projects underway across the Caribbean. We looked at development strategies aimed at modernization, sustainability, and investment readiness. We also look, Madam President, at regional cooperation initiative focused on energy, security, food resilience, and connectivity, both physical and global. And Madam President, I want to highlight our focus on energy and security. I believe, Madam President, that I was able to make the case and make the argument about Nevis and, by extension, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis thrust and desire as we seek to develop our geothermal resource. I believe, Madam President, that I was able to make the connection between energy, water security, food security, and also an improve in our healthcare. Some persons, Madam President, at that forum was kind of taken aback that how little Nevis and St. Kitts are thinking about geothermal energy. But, Madam President, I believe that they were even more interested as to how we can use renewable energy to improve our water security, our food security, and by extension, our health security. And I believe that that created, Madam President, some interest, created quite a bit of interest actually, and I think that the General Forum sought to engage as to exactly what it is that St. Kitts and Nevis are doing. I want to say, Madam President, that we may be small. My representative from Gingerland need to finish that. We may be small. Vitala. Madam President, the second panel sought to engage the matter of water. And we focused on the topic, tackling water infrastructure challenges with fresh solution. Madam President, and that was chaired by a representative of the Caribbean Development Bank. We had on that panel a representative from one of the region's most prolific desalination company, Seven Seas Water Group. We had a representative from a company called Aqualitra, one from Vinci Construction, and one from a company called Integrated Sustainability Consultant. And we looked, Madam President, at the perennial problem of non-revenue water throughout the region. Again, we looked at desalination, and we looked at how we can create some innovative financial solution when it comes to water infrastructure. And again, Madam President, I stressed on the point that when the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis achieve its geothermal, then our water sector can see a significant boost. We can also see a significant boost in our food production. And I am also a strong believer, Madam President, that if you have water security and have food security, then I am persuaded that there can be a significant improvement in our healthcare delivery on the island of Nevis. Madam President, on the sidelines of that conference, I took the opportunity to spread the Nevis message, as we would say. I met with a representative from an English company. I believe it's well known to the island of Nevis, a company called Lagan, or Lagan as some people would call it. And I explained to them, Madam President, that we are presently engaging with our airport expansion project. I believe that the gentleman was very keen, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Premier and the PS may soon receive some correspondence because he was very interested in that project. Madam President, I also met with two members from the British Council, one stationed in Trinidad and one who is the representative for the Export Finance USA, Mexico, and the Caribbean, and get them interested, Madam President, to look to some of these smaller islands when it comes to financing package. I also met with a group from the UN Ops, Madam President, who are responsible for Latin America and the Caribbean region. And again, Madam President, try to sell the message and try to sell the region. I am hopeful and I am confident, Madam President, that all of these meetings will bear some fruit, that they will begin to look to the Caribbean, to small island developing states. And I was, Madam President, under no illusion. I've said to them and explained to them that our small island developing states does not necessarily have the capacity to take on large loans. I was speaking grant and grant funding. It was not a pleasant conversation, Madam President, but I believe that they get the message that St. Kitts and Nevis, one, is open for business, and two, is seeking intervention from friendly organizations, from friendly partners, to help us develop these two beautiful islands that we call St. Kitts and Nevis. With those very brief words, Madam President, I would say to you that I hope that my presentation was pleasing to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Nevis 1. Do we have any further statements?
Personal explanations.
There we received one notice that I should have mentioned in the announcements from the Honourable Cleon Stapleton Simmons, the member for Nevis 5, my apologies, who conveys her regrets that she is unable to attend this morning's sitting as she is not well. So we ask that you would keep her in your thoughts and prayers.
Introduction of bills and first readings.
Recognize the member for Nevis 2.
Madam President, I rise to have introduced into this Honourable House and read for the first time the bill shortly entitled the Nevis Limited Liability Company Amendment Bill, Company Ordinance Amendment Bill 2025.
I recognize the member for Nevis 3.
Madam President, I rise to second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Nevis Limited Liability Company Amendment Bill 2025 be read a first time. Let me repeat that. The Nevis Limited Liability Company Amendment Ordinance. Is it?
The Nevis Limited Liability Company Ordinance Amendment Bill.
Thank you. The question is that the bill shortly entitled the Nevis Limited Liability Company Ordinance Amendment Bill 2025 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Nevis Limited Liability Company Ordinance, Cap 7.04, and for matters related thereto or connected therewith.
Thank you. The bill shortly entitled the Nevis Limited Liability Company Ordinance Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a first time. Thank you. I recognize the member for Nevis 2.
Madam President, I rise to seek the leave of this Honourable House to have introduced and read for the first time the Nevis Business Corporation Ordinance Amendment Bill 2025.
Thank you. Seconder, I recognize the member for Nevis 3.
Madam President, I rise to second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Nevis Business Corporation Ordinance Amendment Bill 2025 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Nevis Business Corporation Ordinance, Cap 7.01, and for matters related thereto or connected therewith.
Thank you. The bill shortly entitled Nevis Business Corporation Ordinance Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a first time. Next item.
Public business, bill second and third readings.
Recognize the member for Nevis 2.
Madam President, I rise to seek your leave to have moved in this Honourable House the second reading of the bill, shortly entitled Nevis Limited Liability Partnership Bill 2025, which had its first reading, should be the Nevis Limited Partnership Ordinance 2025, which had its first reading in July, 3rd of July, 2025. And to commence the debate, Madam President, on that bill. I imagine we can get to the proper nomenclature when we get to committee stage. Madam President, the island of Nevis has had a financial services sector now since 1984, when we started on this journey. Like many other things that have happened in the course of the life of this island, 1984 was a leap of faith by the government of the day. And I'm sure that some people would have criticized, some may even have protested with placards. But the government of the day proceeded, and here we are, 40 plus years later, with the Nevis financial services industry playing a significant part of what we're doing here on the island of Nevis in terms of diversifying the local economy. That arrangement that was made back in 1984 by the then government, led by our national hero, Sir Simeon Daniel, that arrangement gave to a single entity, at the time Morningstar Holdings, a 10-year exclusive on the financial services sector. Put differently, only Morningstar Holdings was allowed to register entities, register companies in terms of that sector. That lasted until 1994. In 1994, by the time that monopoly ended, there had been a change of government, and the Concerned Citizens Movement that I'm now privileged to lead was now at the helm of the island of Nevis. And that government, then led by the Honourable Vance Winkworth Amry of blessed memory, would have embarked on a significant expansion of the sector, introducing new legislation, introducing new products, and giving us a more substantial and a more substantive sector than what it had hitherto been. Hitherto, of course, we had only one product, the Business Corporation, or the IBC, as I think it is referred to. And so, starting in 1994, we started the expansion of this sector by new offerings, new products, new legislation. We got the trust legislation. We subsequently got limited liability company legislation. We got banking, international banking legislation. We got mutual funds legislation. We got insurance legislation. And more recently in this very house, we have passed legislation for online gaming. And we're back again, consistent with the approach of this government, to expand even further the areas and the offerings of this financial services sector. Now, I am to report to the House and to the Nevisian public that this sector has seen, Madam President, significant growth. I believe it was just over 2 years ago when I started my second term as the Premier and Minister of Finance for this island. I gave a charge to the team at Financial Services, and I said to them, that I wanted them to be able to grow this sector by 50% over the next 3 years. I am pleased to say that whilst perhaps we are not at 50% yet, that the growth has been significant. And I have some statistics that I would want to share, Madam President, with you and with the House. In 2019, which was our last year before the COVID pandemic, the island of Nevis would have registered some 1,373 entities. By 2020, that number would have jumped to 1,477 entities. 2021, that number jumped further to 1,839 entities. 2022, in the grips of COVID, that number jumped to 2,665 entities. 2023 was a breakout year, and we had 3,596 entities formed in that year. 2024, we had a slight retreat, and we were able to have, in terms of new registrations, new formations, 3,212. And for the first 6 months of 2025 thus far, we already have 1,678 entities. And if we continue at that pace, we are likely to outpace, Madam President, 2024 by some distance. Now, I want the House and the public to appreciate that these numbers represent new incorporations. But, Madam President, as you know how the sector works, it means that you're putting new incorporations on existing incorporations, and then all of those corporations pay annual fees, renewal fees, as the case may be. So everyone that is added, that is new, adds to the total of those entities that are paying fees and therefore contributing to the revenue of the Nevis Island Administration. I set out the payment of fees, but we know that this sector does much more. For example, office space in Charlestown, rented, and elsewhere, rented by participants in the sector. Jobs that are created in the local economy, and in fact, good paying jobs in the most part. Jobs for professionals like lawyers and accountants and others. This sector, in fact, has created a significant wealth within the island of Nevis, and it is our ambition to continue to increase, to grow, and to develop this sector. No doubt, when we come to this House, God willing, later in the year to speak to the budget, we will have the actual numbers which demonstrate what the sector has done in terms of actual revenue into the NIA coffers. And of course, I want the public to understand that revenue into the NIA coffers means that our civil servants are paid. It means that the member opposite gets paid. It means that the members on this side get paid. It means that the expenses of this House are dealt with, that roads are built, that medicine for our hospital is provided, and I can go on and on. Revenue and revenue generation are absolutely critical if this island is going to not only survive but prosper, to be able to provide for the increasing needs of our people, and to be able to say to other islands and nations around that we are doing what is necessary to progress and to take Nevis forward. And isn't that why we're here, Madam President? Progress, moving us forward. Because the alternative is for us to stay in the same place, to remain stagnant. And if we remain stagnant, then what Nevis are we going to leave for our children and our grandchildren? And how are we going to ensure that they have jobs and they have opportunity in this, the land of their birth? We have to keep moving. We have to keep going forward. And that is why governments are elected. They're elected to lead and to ensure that the island is progressing, moving forward, developing. When the senator on this side spoke and wished the nation a happy independence, she spoke of in her lifetime, and she's yet a young woman, and people having outhouses and the like. I want divisions to think about where now in Nevis they find outhouses. We used to call them latrine. Where now? I spoke to someone recently who asked me if I know what is called lodging. What is lodging? It used to be old clothes and things like that that people slept on. We couldn't afford mattress in Nevis. You couldn't have bed, you had pillows with what? Straw? You had a situation where when I was a boy a long time ago, Madam President, I walked 2 miles. How far is Scarborough from Market Shop? About a mile. It seemed like 2. My feet were short.
Yeah, with a gallon pan.
With a gallon pan. Mile up the road to catch water. Mile back down the road to bathe in that cold water. Mile back up the road to go to school. That was our life here in Nevis. Now where would we have been if we did not have government and leadership to say to our people that we must progress? The things that I'm describing are no matters of distant memory. It's like now, I'm sure, Madam President, if you were to say to your son, go and use an old-time phone with the dial, child would not know what to do. So young people now don't know anything about those struggles because this island has been blessed with successive governments that have looked to the future, made provision. I was at a different place recently, and I heard minister speaking to the water situation just 2 miles away, our sister St. Kitts. And the minister who has responsibility for the water over there said something that I thought was interesting. He said, when the desalination plant in St. Kitts is finished, that the people of Bastia will have water 24 hours a day for the first time in 15 years. Nevis done gone past that long time. How could it have happened if it were not for government that is seeking to progress our island? If it were not for that, we would still be catching water in the bucket, in the gallon pan. We would not have what we now enjoy. And too often in this country, we have naysayers, Madam President, who seem to be stuck in some type of thinking that development, progress, job creation, economic growth, that all of those are somehow bad. And so you hear the noise that some people are making. But I am here this morning to support this bill because this is yet another manifestation of this government's efforts to move this island forward. Sometimes, you know, Madam President, we enjoy the fruits, we enjoy the benefits, but sometimes we don't pay attention, or perhaps even we forget from whence we have come and how it is now that those fruits and those benefits accrue to us. We ought not to forget, because it was not always so. And when we come in here with legislation, we come in here with initiatives, I want the people of Nevis to understand that we come to serve them. And that these initiatives, policies, prescriptions, and laws are designed to move this island forward, create jobs, create opportunity. That is what we must do as a government. And so we have come this morning to talk about and to debate the Nevis Limited Partnership Ordinance 2025. And the good people at the legal department have provided me with a beautiful memo, which I confess denies me the opportunity to say that I will be brief. So we look then to the provisions of the legislation. The Nevis Limited Partnership Ordinance introduces several significant provisions, including the following. The bill applies to partnerships formed under it and mandates compliance with its provisions. We have the definition section, of course, which sets out the definition of key terms. We have the instructions from the bill that instruments must be filed in English, but we have also made provisions for authenticated translations if necessary. There's flexibility to establish partnerships with names that are stated in non-Latin alphabet. Fees and penalties for filing and registration are established with annual renewal requirements for partnerships. And of course, of importance to the sector, there are requirements for maintenance of a registered agent. Part 2 deals with purposes and powers and essentially sets out that partnerships formed under the ordinance can operate for any lawful business purpose or have extensive powers, and they can have limited or unlimited duration as specified in their articles or in their agreement of formation. Partnership agreement, forgive me. The bill provides for the recognition of legal personality for limited partnerships, which are vested with the same powers as natural persons to conduct necessary business activities. Now, what does that mean? It simply means, Madam President, that the partnership will be clothed with legal authority, just like a company or an individual, and therefore be able to sue or be sued and be able to own property as the case may be. We have the registered agent and service of process at Part 3 of the legislation, and we maintain that all partnerships must have a registered agent in Nevis for legal and administrative purposes. A registered agent can resign with a 30-day notice. Partnerships must appoint a successor to avoid penalties. And service of process, that is, if the partnership is being sued, must be directed to the registered office of the partnership, and registered agents are then responsible for transmitting that document, those documents, to the partnership. The bill sets out at Part 4 thereof the procedures for forming a partnership and the requirements for naming it. Partnerships are formed by filing articles of formation with the registrar. The name of the partnership must comply with specific naming conventions and may include suffixes indicating its status. And the ordinance allows for the reservation of names and mandates the maintenance of a register of partnerships. Section 4 of the legislation, Part 4, speaks to formation and registration of partnerships and says who can form partnerships. It can be done through registered agents, and those registered agents must follow specific procedures. Articles of formation must be executed by the promoter and filed with the registrar. The partnership name must be unique and not similar to existing partnerships. And limited partnerships, importantly, must have the words LP or limited partnership in their name. Forgive me. The letters LP or the words limited partnership in their name. We go on, and I'm just going through the sections quickly, Madam President. Limited partnerships at Part 5. It speaks to the capital contributions and the liability for capital contributions, and that is the liability inter se, that is among partners, who has to contribute what and how that works. And the legislation speaks to how the structure and framework of the limited partnership and the partnerships to be formed under this ordinance are to function. It provides a very comprehensive code, and incidentally, I should say that this has come after some discussions with the sector They were sent a draft, an early draft, and this would have sought to incorporate their comments and their responses. Naming and language requirements. Partnership names must adhere to specific naming conventions and can utilize various alphabets. As we said before, they cannot be identical or confusing. Non-Latin alphabet characters are permitted, but an authenticated translation must be provided, and the registrar must maintain a register of partnerships, including names and registration details. Registered agents, Madam President, can reserve partnership names for future use under certain conditions. Name reservations can be granted for 10 or 120 days with options for renewal, and amendments to articles of formation can be filed to change partnership details. Now, why are these types of provisions important? They're important because, of course, one can change and evolve. And they're also important because sometimes one would want to reserve a specific name. So if I want Brantley LP, and that's important to me, I can seek to have that name reserved for between 10 to 120 days. That is, during that period, no other person can get that name. But there is also something else that's at work. And I want the House and the public to understand that each and every aspect of this attracts fees that come to the revenue of the Nevis Island Administration. So if you want to reserve a name, I'm not sure what the fee is going to be, but there will be a fee. If you want to amend your articles, there will be a fee. The registered agents will charge a fee. The incorporation will come at a fee. And I don't know if you recall, Madam President, that certainly in your time in the chair, we have come to this Parliament and we have sought to increase some fees that are payable by this sector. We announced it, I believe, was in our budget of last year, and we would since have implemented it. And you know why we are doing that, Madam President, is because we recognize that the island requires revenue to function. But we equally recognize that we must shield our people as much as we can from tax increases and the burdens of additional taxation. And so this sector, sometimes referred to as the offshore sector, but the financial services sector in more modern language. What this sector means is that fees are not falling on the people of Nevis. The revenue that this sector generates is entirely external to the people of Nevis. And that is one of the reasons why this government has sought to utilize these types of mechanisms to enhance the revenue of the NIA without placing any additional burden on the people of Nevis. Madam President, if you allow me a moment to digress, not too far. We came in here some time ago and we passed legislation to increase the tourism and development levy from 2%, where it was, to 3%. We added 1%. There was the usual noise that was made, but the point is similar. And I want to make that point simply to say it's the same sentiment that informs the government. Because again, the tourism and development levy does not fall on any person here in Nevis unless that person is staying at a local hotel or eating out at a local restaurant. The establishments, the business places, do not pay it. It is paid by the guest. And based on the numbers, and the PS Finance is here, but based on the numbers, the vast majority of that money comes through the Four Seasons Resort. And that therefore tells us that the burden of that fee, that tax, forgive me, is falling on visitors to the island. Again, not on the man and woman in Jessups or Cotton Ground. And that is a policy that we have adopted wherever possible to shield our small population from tax increases and through fees and taxes that are targeted, we have sought to earn additional revenue without placing a burden on our people. I think, Madam President, that that is what a caring government does. When we look, if I can jump in the interest of time, to Part 7 of the legislation, and that speaks to the management. Before I get to Part 7, forgive me, Part 6, the registration of charges. That's again important, because what we are seeking to do here is to say that if there are liens or charges that are applicable to this partnership, then individuals can register those charges with the registry. And guess what? Again, a fee would be payable. And so that serves the important function of additional revenue for the government, but it also serves an important legal function, which is to ensure that charges are duly registered, and the legislation goes on to speak about the priority of those charges. And that, as we know, is very important, so that in any situation where there may be a winding up or whatever language would be applied, a dissolution perhaps to the partnership, then it would be clear the order of priority in terms of who takes and at what point. Part 7, forgive me, deals with the management by the general partners, and Part 8 deals with partners more generally, how they are admitted and how they are expelled. Part 9 of the legislation, Madam President, captures what I have hitherto spoken to, that the partnership is a legal person. It speaks of its liability and the fact that it can naturally, as a legal person, be sued, can own property. It also speaks to the indemnification of partners in certain circumstances and sets out the documents to be kept by a partnership. Speaks to meetings and essentially provides a framework for how the partnership is to function. We have forgive me, Madam President, certificates of good standing and partnerships. I'm trying to find the section. I will. 25? Is it 25? Yes, certificates of good standing. Again, a revenue measure, because each certificate will come at a cost. But importantly, it is consistent with the best practices in the industry, Madam President, because it means that the partnership to open a bank account or to engage in a business transaction would require a certificate of good standing. And what that does, for the benefit of the public, it merely states that the partnership is in good standing. That is, it has complied with the law, it has paid whatever it's supposed to pay, and it is existing on the register in good standing. That, I think, is important, again, from a revenue measure, but also important in terms of ensuring that the financial services sector on the island of Nevis continues to operate in a manner which is open, transparent, and which accords with best industry standards globally. And so I wanted to highlight that aspect of it as well, which is at section 25. Madam President, if I can move to part 10. I don't propose, Madam President, to deal with every single section. But if I can move to part 10, which speaks to conversion, consolidation, merger, and spin-off. Again, a very important provision, a very important part, because it speaks to how limited partnerships can transform themselves into something else. How they can converge, that's the word that's being used. How they can consolidate, how they can merge, and it then goes on at section 72 to speak to the effects of that. And so I think again that that's important because it speaks to the flexibility now that's being built into the product. And it shows the thought that has gone into it. I want to commend the legal team because it is demonstrative that what we're trying to create here is a vehicle that is flexible, a vehicle that can be used in various ways, but a vehicle that can also be consolidated, merged. It can be converted to another vehicle. And the intention here is to create, again, a world-class product that would have appeal to individuals externally who are seeking, Madam President, to conduct their financial affairs in a manner that best suits them. I would want to speak very quickly to part 11 of the legislation because it speaks to how a limited partnership or a partnership under this ordinance can be struck off. It speaks to how it can be dissolved, and it introduces language of winding up. Winding up normally is language that is limited to companies, but I notice the language is introduced here. I see the legal advisor nodding her head, and I have no better than to argue with her. So, strike off dissolution and winding up. It means that it tells us how the authorities, the regulator, the registrar, can deal with entities by striking them off, non-payment of fees, as the case may be, if they have not maintained a registered agent. But it also provides a mechanism for the entities themselves to decide, well, the business that was afoot has come to an end, and so we will dissolve the entity. And so there are provisions for voluntary dissolution, that is, we decide that the business is over, but there are also provisions for involuntary dissolution, normally associated with when an entity cannot pay its debts, or that entity is having difficulties of some other kind, or that entity is not doing what it's supposed to do. And so, Madam President, the legislation really does provide a comprehensive framework for the introduction of this new product. Another step as we try to build out the infrastructure of financial services on the island of Nevis. Incidentally, Madam President, we only last year, I think it was, celebrated 40 years of financial services, 2024. 40 years. And it is instructive that 40 years on, we're still innovating. We haven't stopped. We haven't sat on our laurels. We are still innovating. We are still trying to make the island of Nevis attractive to investors, to say to them that we have cutting-edge legislation. We had the first reading of 2 short bills just earlier today. And some people may say, oh, you're always coming in here with these little amendments. It is the continuous process of innovating, of responding to the industry's needs, of listening to stakeholders, and giving the industry the products that are desirable and that international investors find attractive. And so, Madam President, we have set out, of course, that there will be regulations, and Part 13 provides that we will have those regulations. We also have provided for an advisory committee, which is a novel invention. Well, I suppose all inventions are novel. But it's an invention because for the first time we're trying to get greater oversight to see how this new vehicle is going to function. And so, in the context then of financial services more broadly, the island of Nevis is now offering the IBC, the LLC, the trust, the mutual fund, the international insurance, the international banking. It's now offering, hopefully once this is passed, the partnership. And all of these are products that we continue to come to this Honourable House and introduce in order to build out the industry. And one of the things that I have not said before, but I will say now, is that in building out the industry, you're also building capacity in our people. It may be, Madam President, that our lawyers and accountants and service providers will take some time. This bill is quite substantial. But I assure you that within short order, they will have the necessary expertise. They will be au fait with it. They will be able to opine and advise on it. And hopefully we will see a flood of business that comes to the island, new business, as a result of this legislation. Madam President, what then are we seeking to do? I had an earlier monologue about development and progress. But I want the House and our people to understand that we don't just come in here for show. We come in here because we have important business to deal with. We come in here because what we're seeking to achieve in this Honourable House is to create the kind of Nevis where we can prosper. And so we anticipate, in terms of economic impact, increase registration of partnerships. As we launch this, hopefully, we'll have everything in place for this to go almost immediately. We want to boost government revenues, which I've spoken of several times already for the morning, and that comes through registration and renewal fees. We want to see the growth of ancillary services, legal, accounting, corporate administration, and we want to see, importantly, a reinforcement of Nevis's branding as an innovative, forward-thinking, first-class financial center. The legal and regulatory impact, Madam President, we want to create a clearer framework for our courts and regulators in adjudicating disputes, reduce ambiguity in partner liability, protecting both investors and creditors, and we want to create a stronger alignment with Financial Action Task Force standards and international regulatory expectations. I want to emphasize that point because Nevis has and will continue to conduct itself in accordance with best practices and international standards. This legislation will see an expanded role for the registrar in compliance and administration. And of course, Madam President, there will be an increased need for training and capacity building of our regulators, practitioners, and even the judiciary, which will now have to contend with new legislation and the provisions thereof. And so, what we're seeking to do here is to create, through the Nevis Limited Partnership Ordinance, a strategic reform that adds the availability of an attractive investment and wealth management vehicle to the suite of products already available. And we feel, Madam President, that this initiative highlights Nevis as a modern, reputable, and competitive financial services jurisdiction. By combining contractual flexibility with statutory safeguards, the bill provides a robust platform for attracting investment while preserving the integrity of the financial services industry. And Madam President, just so the House and the public are clear, I know that there is significant room for improvement. How do I know? Because we have a competitor not so far away, a stone's throw away, in the BVI. And whilst 2023, just by way of example, was a bumper year for Nevis, with 3,595 registrations. Our friends in the BVI that same year had 22,317 registrations. While in 2024, Nevis had 3,212 registrations. Our friends in the BVI had 27,362 registrations. And while for this year, we feel good that we are progressing at 1,678 registrations in the first 6 months, the BVI was already at 14,008 registrations. And so we have been averaging anywhere from 11 to 16% in terms of our performance compared to the BVI's performance. It tells me, therefore, that there is significant room for growth. And I would like in the future to come back here to say to the people of Nevis that the numbers in Nevis per year now are 10 and 15,000. 20,000, like what is happening in the BVI. Unless people feel that that too is a matter that should excite public anxiety, let me say that it ought not to do so. That this team has been working. In fact, our legal advisor has only just returned from Mexico City, where she would have been part of a Nevision team that went there for the STEP Latin American Conference. Prior to that, the island of Nevis would have hosted the STEP Caribbean Conference. And what these efforts are all geared towards is enhancing the sector, enlarging and expanding the sector, and making sure that we can get to the stage where our friends in the BVI are in terms of numbers. When we get up to 10 and 15 and 20,000, then we're cooking with gas. That's the point in time when, as in the BVI, you see the professional community, you see people moving in, you see higher wages. That's what we're seeking to do. But we understand that to achieve that, we need to do what we're here in the House doing today, creating the building blocks. Because you can't send a team to Mexico City, and prior to that I think the team was in Panama, unless you have products that people want, products that are responsive to the market. And I feel so happy when the legal advisor said to us that the attention out there is great and it is positive, and that many now in Latin America are preferring to use Nevis entities for their wealth strategies and asset planning. It means, therefore, and the only reason I reference the BVI numbers is to show that sometimes we feel that we're doing well, but in truth, there is much better that we can do. And so I'm hopeful that we can leave that 3,000 type mark, move up, because that's what Nevis is about. Progress, development, move up, so that we can get to the kind of numbers, Madam President, that it starts to make a more significant impact in terms of our local economy and in terms of government revenue, in terms of job creation and the quality of jobs that are created. And so I wish this bill safe passage to this Honourable House. May it please you.
Thank you very much. Member for Nevis 2. Any other contributions? I recognize the member for Nevis 4.
Good morning to you again, Madam President, and to all listening. I rise to give my contribution to the bill, the Nevis Limited Partnership Bill 2025. Madam President, I am pleased to note that under the visionary leadership of an NRP government, certain foundational pillars were put in place that we can still benefit from today, one of which being the financial services sector. The purpose of this bill, Madam President, is to provide for the formation of limited partnerships in Nevis and to cover legal matters related to those partnerships. And I'll take a moment, Madam President, to give a little context of what a limited partnership is. Generally, it is a type of business structure, and it has some advantages over general partnerships and being an incorporated or corporate entity. In limited partnerships, there are two types of partnerships. You have the limited partners who primarily contribute capital, money, investments, etc. And then you have the general partners who would actually do the work, carrying out the purposes of the investment, so to speak. This type of business structure is quite appealing, and especially to the international finance community, as was mentioned earlier. It can definitely be limited partnership, can be a strategic tool for economic transformation, because a small island jurisdiction such as Nevis, we are not necessarily positioned to compete with larger countries. And so when we have these legal structures and we specialize in them, then it gives us an opportunity to create a niche that persons can then be drawn towards. Madam President, although the bill does not expressly state its objective in the bill itself, I would have to say that it does provide an opportunity to increase foreign direct investment. And we have seen a number of initiatives attempting to provide the legislative framework to attract foreign direct investment to Nevis and St. Kitts and Nevis by extension. In fact, Madam President, just recently, we would have seen the enactment of the Special Sustainability Zone Authorization Act with the objective to facilitate long-term economic opportunities, attract foreign and domestic investment, and generate revenue for the benefit of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Regrettably, however, I must say, Madam President, that this legislation strikes at the heart of our sovereignty, and really, in the opinion of many, it should be repealed. And so while we strive to generate tools and mechanisms to expand our economy and to diversify the economy, we still must be mindful of what can become if they're not used in the correct way. Madam President, I am mindful that we are looking at the limited partnership bill, and as I indicated before, there are some benefits. However, I did have an opportunity to go through the bill, and there are a couple of issues that I would like to address. My device here is not moving at the speed of which I would want, but like with any legislation, Madam President, you know, there are pros and there are cons, and I think while some of the benefits of the partnership, limited partnership legislation has been provided, there's still some areas that I think we can look towards with regards to improving the functionality of the legislation. Madam President, as I looked through the definition section, I was drawn to the definition for emergency condition because it would indicate that an emergency condition would be defined, not limited to, but a number of events such as revolution or insurrection, invasion or occupation by foreign military forces, etc. And at the end, I realized that this definition and this language was really speaking to foreign partnerships who may want to domicile here in Nevis. And while that language may be appropriate for what may happen externally, I do feel, Madam President, that we have spoken at length about the impacts of climate change and how it can disrupt business activities, especially in small island states. We have heard the Prime Minister of Barbados speaking about innovation in agreements that would help to protect small islands in the event that our businesses are disrupted from hurricanes or other natural disasters. So I do believe, Madam President, while this definition for an emergency condition would be recognized for external entities, I do believe that we should provide some protection for ourselves as the jurisdiction with regards to what may happen in the event of natural disasters. Madam President, it is no secret that new legislation is being looked at that would help us to protect ourselves from lawsuits and damages if we're not able to provide the services that are committed to in these types of agreements. Another area that caught my attention, Madam President, has to do with Section 3 that speaks to application of this ordinance. And what it says is that a partnership shall not be considered to be carrying on business because of any one or more of the following. It says if it has one or more partners who are registered or resident in Nevis, it maintains bank accounts in Nevis, it holds meetings of partners in Nevis, it maintains its books and records in Nevis, it maintains an administrative office in Nevis with respect to assets, business, or activities done outside of Nevis, if it maintains a registered agent in Nevis. And Madam President, it would seem to me that if all of these criteria are met, then what is left to say that a partnership is not carrying on business? And so to the extent that it has gone through this detail to say that notwithstanding any of these criteria are met, a partnership can be considered to be not carrying on business, then maybe there should have been a similar statement to define exactly what is meant by carrying on business, Madam President. And again, I make contributions sometimes for clarity and to minimize ambiguity at the end of the day. Madam President, under Section 4.7, where it speaks to the form of instruments, what I found interesting is that you can file an instrument, and then if that instrument has to be corrected, then the effective date of that correction would be the same as the original date. So I am assuming that if one has to review instruments that have been filed, let's say they were filed in October, and a correction was made in November or December, then what this is saying is that the effective date would be the date that the original instrument was filed, and not necessarily any indication that a correction or amendment was made. This, I think, Madam President, could provide an opportunity to file certain documents, knowing that some information is missing, and then you come back and you provide that information or update an instrument, and then going forward, it would have the effective date as if it were that way from the very beginning. And that, Madam President, I think can create some controversy. Madam President, under Section 6, which speaks to fees and penalties, number 2 says, fees and penalties payable in respect of this ordinance shall, upon the authorization of the Minister of Finance, be payable in dollars or any other currency in any medium of exchange now known or hereinafter invented or adopted. Madam President, I think there should be some clarification that if fees and penalties are not going to be paid in dollars, what other currency is this legislation contemplating? I am quite comfortable with fees and penalties being paid in dollars. That is our currency of use, and I think that this area could create some problems as the legislation is being implemented. Madam President, as I move through, under Section 15, Part 4, Section 15, which speaks to formation and name of partnership, it says under number 1 that any person acting on behalf of a registered agent may form a partnership under this ordinance. It is my understanding, Madam President, that the registered agent usually operates on behalf of the partnership. And so to indicate that any person acting on behalf of a registered agent, again, could create some, maybe just need some clarification, but I would like to see the occasion under which any person acting on behalf of the registered agent may form a partnership under this ordinance. Madam President.
I don't remember, can you refer me to the section? I'm trying to follow.
Section 15, Part 4, formation and name of partnership.
And your 15.1
Section 15,
reads,
1, excuse me?
your 15.1 reads,
Any person acting on behalf of a registered agent. Says Part 4.
your section 15.1 differs from what I have before me and seems to differ from what the other members have. Perhaps you're reading from a different document.
Under formation and name of partnership, what does your section have?
So you, so that is what appears to be in the hard copy documents that are before the House today. And as I understand it, there may have been some changes from the first reading, so the first document that was presented. We are now at second reading, and so the version you have may be slightly different. So if you could look at the version that was circulated for today, today's sitting, that's the version we're working with.
Well, it would have been beneficial if some indication was made that this bill is different, because the comments that I have are based on what was presented at the first reading. And so...
But Honourable Member, since that time you would have been presented with the all members would have been served with copies of the ordinance that we are working with today.
Yes, Madam President, but there was no indication that it was different. Anyway, in that regard, Madam President, the sections may not be the same, and as it is indicated here, it does not say what is in the version that I had. So I would just move on to see if there is anything else that is outstanding. In fact, Madam President, it's a very large bill, and so if all of the sections are off, then it would be difficult to try to align them at this point. Notwithstanding, Madam President, I would continue to give my contribution to the bill, notwithstanding the specific sections. Any legislation that seeks to advance the financial services sector, Madam President, of course, once we have to deal with external markets, would lend itself to some risks that we must consider. The mover of the bill this morning would have spoken about the need to be compliant with various regional and international legislation, and it is important that we consider some of the challenges that we may have with a limited partnership bill. Some jurisdictions would delay moving forward with limited partnership legislation because it has been shown that this type of business structure has been misused for tax avoidance, laundering, or hiding ownership of assets, etc., if oversight is weak. Now, Madam President, we know the pains of being recorded on whether gray list, black list, or whatever list, and so we would want to ensure that due diligence is done when necessary to avoid the misuse of this legislation by those looking to form partnerships here in Nevis. With regards to limited partnership, the mover would have indicated the number of different legislation that would have been passed and the number of different instruments and offerings that have been used to help advance the sector. Madam President, we know that as we have more legislation, the need for regulatory compliance, the need for regulators, compliance officers would increase. And with that, you have the increased cost of maintaining compliance. Madam President, I would have spoken in this Honorable House before with regards to loopholes in the Financial Services Regulatory Act that would have caused court cases to be decided upon against our favor. And as much as penalties and fees are considered to be a significant part of generating revenues, we must ensure that the legislative framework is in place to ensure that our enforcement persons and regulatory persons can be confident and successfully represent these other legislation and these other tools in our court that we have. Now, when we speak about compliance and different documents that must be filed, I am not certain, Madam President, that our financial regulatory entity is being upgraded to keep up with the level of demand on these new instruments that are being provided. And so I do believe that once we would want to provide the tools to expand the offerings, we must also ensure that our regulatory framework is also in place to protect us from what could become very significant lawsuits. Madam President, one of the requirements would be, where fees can be accepted, would be to obtain a certificate of good standing. And this is one example where I feel that we should really upgrade our services. Because, Madam President, when you go to obtain a certificate of good standing, I don't think too many persons who would be attracted here to form partnerships would feel comfortable in the space that is provided in order to get these documents. And so while we can speak of the amount of revenue that is being generated from these services, then we must also provide the working environment for our people that would be aligned with the type of services that we would want to provide. I think that area where you go to collect certificate of good standing should be expanded. I think it is very disheartening to know that persons have to work in such a small, confined area, considering the significance of the work that they're doing, and persons, the public that that area serves, is really less than adequate, Madam President. Now, we know that we have a lot of offshore business, and one of the concerns about this area is really that they are usually paper entities, so to speak. And so the spillover that we would want to see in the population at large, we would not see it as easily. In the offshore area, it was mentioned this morning, you have certain skill sets, such as lawyers and accountants, etc., who would want to prepare themselves for the expected work that may come with the passage of this bill. But, Madam President, I think that more can be done from the government to ensure that, for example, incentives for physical presence, so that a partnership that may be worth billions of dollars would probably employ a few persons, a registered agent, maybe a lawyer, accountant. But if there are any incentives to actually have a physical presence, where more spaces can be occupied, where more people can be employed rather than the specific skill sets, I think that would be beneficial to the expansion of the sector, and more people would be able to feel the impact of having this area. Madam, the LPs, limited partnerships, are good. Again, if incentives can be provided for investment in local projects, I think that that would go a long way in our people feeling the impact. We have a number of local projects that persons who are forming limited partnerships, the limited partners who would want to make an investment, I think if the government was proactive and creative, they can design projects that these LPs can invest in. And of course, we have renewable energy, tourism, even small business development, Madam President. The legislation does not indicate any incentivization for the investment in the development of local projects, so to speak. And then, Madam President, with regards to requirements to hire and train local staff, for some of these LPs, that is something that can be considered. And of course, to provide professional certification programs. Because what we would see happen, Madam President, is that if the opportunities are not provided to train our workforce, you would find more and more that people would have to come in from overseas in order to do this. And so while we are advancing the financial services sector, it would be, I think, a good policy strategy to ensure that our workforce is being upgraded in order to fit within this niche, Madam President. Madam President, we also can look at what can happen. Again, one of our main thrusts has been to minimize our reliance on external sources, external factors. We would have seen what would have happened when we had the global financial crisis and how the money just seemed to have disappeared from coming to this area. And so while this legislation is attempting to attract more foreign direct investment, we must also look at ways that we can develop our island in the meanwhile. It doesn't do the country any good to have multi-million billionaires forming limited partnerships and the country itself, the island itself, is not feeling any of the benefit of having those businesses here. Madam President, the LP legislation, like I indicated, can be designed in such a way, or maybe the regulations may provide that, where we can help with the development of Nevis and where you can have Nevis develop more as a climate resilient island. The financial services sector, it is expanding. The tourism sector has not expanded much. But Madam President, there are other sectors outside of financial services. And when we speak about diversifying the economy, this legislation is diversifying the tool set within the financial services sector, but it really has not broadened the economic base. And so when we speak about developing the green and the blue economy, these are areas that we would need to look into, Madam President. When we speak about what we would need to do in terms of agriculture and agro-processing, when we look at what we would need to do in terms of the digital economy and innovation, Madam President, we speak about limited partnerships, etc. We have to ensure that our ICT is in place and can accommodate and support the influx of businesses. And so while it seems that this government has a preference to deal with the financial services sector, there is a broad cross-section of the economy base that really must be given attention as well, Madam President. Madam President, when we look at, for example, our creative and cultural industries, we know that this is an area that is expanding regionally and internationally. And we cannot see where expanding the financial services sector is trickling down to the upgrade and the upkeep of these areas. And when we speak about progress in Nevis, the progress, Madam President, should be for all. It should not be for just those who work in the financial services sector, because really and truly, Madam President, we are not seeing the impact on the ground of the advancing of this type of legislation. I am hoping that the government can take the necessary policy direction to align the development of our people so that more people can benefit from this legislation that has been put forward. I apologize, Madam President, that I was not aware that this was different. I hope in the future, because if you look at it, it looks the same. But I hope that in the future, if changes are made between the first and second reading, that at least a note can be presented to indicate that this is not the same bill that was presented for the first reading. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Member for Nevis 4. I recognize the honourable nominated member.
Madam President, good afternoon. A pleasant good afternoon to all who are here and all who are following us on the live stream or on NTV. Madam President, I rise to lend my support for the bill before this Honourable House today. It's a bill entitled the Nevis Limited Liability Partnership Bill 2025. Madam President, this bill is not a controversial bill at all. By any measure that we can look at it, we can see that this is something that we can all get behind. Indeed, I believe the member for Nevis 5, the member on the opposition benches, I didn't hear it, Nevis 4, sorry, the member on the opposition bench, I didn't hear it, but I believe I got the sense that there is some support for the bill from that side. So it is not a controversial bill by any measure. So I would be very brief, Madam President. The bill seeks to provide some additional flexibility for our offshore financial services sector. And as we have heard from the mover of the bill this morning, the offshore financial services sector on Nevis is almost as old as Nevis being a part of an independent federation. As we have just celebrated our 42nd year of independence, we became independent in 1983 on the 19th of September. So we are still kind of in our celebratory mode for independence. The offshore financial services sector on Nevis came into being in 1984, just 1 year after. So it was one of the first things that the Nevis Island Administration then brought to bear to sort of diversify and improve our economy here on Nevis. And it has grown in leaps and bounds from those days until now. So it is for us, Madam President, to find new ways to improve the product that we have, to find new ways to be more attractive to persons or entities operating in this space. And I believe, and as the mover of the bill has said, and I support him, that the limited liability, the limited partnership bill that we're passing today is such a step. Allowing these companies to form as LPs is another step in the right direction. As we heard the mover of the bill say, we are doing well in Nevis. In 2024, we registered over 3,000 entities, and so far this year, we have registered over 1,600 companies or entities. But when we look at what's happening in jurisdictions such as the BVI, that's just close to us, we realize that we are still a little way behind. We realize that we have some room for improvement. And so by improving and by increasing the number of different ways that these entities could participate here on Nevis, it only bodes well for our whole offshore financial sector, Madam President. So this government, we continue to find ways to diversify our economy. Oftentimes, Madam President, you would hear folks in the outside, the people from the opposition, pundits and so on, they would say that the government needs to find ways to diversify the economy. We need to diversify from tourism, we need to diversify from this, we need to diversify from that. So this is a tangible effort at diversification. And I fully support the bill, Madam President. I don't think I need to go through all of the different sections. The mover of the bill would have done a pretty good job in explaining the bill. And of course, the member opposite would have come and she would have pointed out some of, what she sees as issues with the bills. But the essence of it, though, is that there is some support. So if there is support from those corners, it means that it is a good bill, Madam President. It is not normal that we would even get what can be construed as a semblance of support. So I'm happy that we are getting that today. So it leaves me with not much to do, Madam President, because normally I would come up and sometimes I might get on my high horse, Madam President, because I would have to be, correcting the record and, pointing out where the right things are. But today is a good day in the House of Assembly here in Nevis because we're not seeing much opposition to the bill. I particularly made note of where the member opposite said, LPs are good, Madam President. I quote, LPs are good. So I think that is an indication of support, Madam President. So what we can look forward to from this bill is a number of entities who would have wanted to participate in our space here in Nevis, but there was no room for them to come in and participate as partnerships. We are now opening that up for them to come in and to participate in our offshore financial sector here on the island of Nevis. So we are looking forward, Madam President, to that growth and what that growth could mean for the people of Nevis. I remember as a youngster coming out of school, quite a lot of persons who came out wanted to go and work in the offshore financial services sector because that sector provided salaries that were higher than what we were providing in government, higher than what were being provided in the local banking sector and in other areas on the island. So it was seen as a lucrative area, Madam President, and it is still seen as that today. Indeed, I remember some folks, well, there are people who I know who went into that sector very early, coming out of secondary and sixth form, and some going to university and coming back and getting into that space. And they're doing very well today. So the offshore financial services sector has had that spin-off effect for persons here on the island of Nevis. So it has not only been for people who are participating within the space, but there has been that spin-off effect. So we are hopeful that with an increased services sector, with a bigger sector, that we will also see that spin-off activity going to other areas of the Nevisian economy, Madam President. Madam President, as I said, I don't think there's much to be said on this bill because there is support from the entire House. So with those few words, I would want to rest my case. I would want to offer my full support to the mover of the bill and to this Nevis Limited Liability Partnership Bill 2025. May it please, Madam President.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Nevis 1.
Good afternoon, Madam President and members of this House, those who are listening, and certainly those who are viewing. Madam President, I rise to make a very brief intervention in the debate that is presently before this Honourable House on the Nevis Limited Partnership Ordinance. And I want to focus very briefly on Part 9 of the ordinance, on Section 65. Part 9, Section 65. Madam President, before I get into what I deem would be my very brief intervention, the Honourable Member for Nevis number 4 indicated that, and I wrote it down, the tourism sector not expanding much. And I thought to myself very briefly, Madam President, that this government that we are on a regular basis seek to attract investors, and we continue to seek to create the enabling environment for local investors as well to partner with the government to expand our very tourism sector. And I am in awe, Madam President, that while the government's effort from time to time seek to attract investors to expand the tourism sector, lo and behold, same opposition continue to create obstacles. Same opposition continue to. We were greeted by what this morning? Protest. But yet still, the leader of a political party on the island of Nevis,
Recognize the member for Nevis 4.
Madam President, I rise on a point of order with regards to rules of debate, in that the presentation by the member for number 1 is not consistent with the provisions under Section 43, contents of speeches.
Which subsection are you referring to?
3, Madam President. Probably.
Section 43
43
says that it shall be out of order to use offensive and insulting language about members of the National Assembly.
Yes, Madam President. I knew where he was going. Thank you, Madam President. He was speaking off of the matter before us at this time, Madam President. Yeah.
Honourable Member, I'm not getting the point of order that you're making.
Okay.
You've directed us to 43.3, which says that it shall be out of order to use offensive and insulting language about members of the National Assembly.
Yes. Madam President, let me look at the correct section that I need to.
So I'll ask the member to proceed with the presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Madam President, thank you so much for your protection. Thank you so much for your protection. Madam President, I am simply responding, Madam President, to the comment by the member opposite. And I would repeat it, tourism sector not expanding much. And Madam President, I am not aware that I have engaged in any insulting statement. I am just simply responding. However, Madam President, I am simply making the point that while this government, under the ambit of Nevis Limited Partnership Ordinance, in terms of diversifying and in terms of creating an enabling environment for business to be done in Nevis, that here it is, the members are saying that certain developments on the island of Nevis are not expanding much. I'm guided by you, Madam President, if I'm being insulting. Madam President, I believe that the point has been well made, that while this government continue to do what it can to diversify and expand our economy, that the point has been well made that the opposition continue to create roadblocks in the system. Madam President, Part 9, Section 65. I note the various documents to be kept by a limited partnership. And I also note, Madam President, that in Section G, copies of all documents and other documents filed by the partnerships. Just a suggestion, Madam President, that perhaps in closing any possibility of loopholes, I refer to Section 64, where it also gives indication of books and records. And perhaps that may give some protection to what I was thinking in terms of Section 65, where perhaps there can be some very clear indication of the addition of annual financial records. It is a suggestion, and perhaps the legal minds can take a look at it and see if there is any value, Madam President, in adding and making it very clear that the annual financial records can also be one such document that must be kept by the limited partnership entity as part of the documentation that ought to be kept, Madam President. Madam President, with those very brief words, I want to wish this bill safe passage through this Honourable House.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Nevis 3.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I rise to make a brief intervention as well to this bill before the debate before this Honourable House on the Nevis Limited Partnership Bill 2025. Of course, Madam President, I want to commend the mover of the bill for doing an extraordinary job in trying to take us through the entire bill. It's a very comprehensive bill. And at the same time, I would like to also commend the legal department and the team at the legal department for putting this piece of legislation together. Madam President, of course, Nevis has benefited tremendously from financial services. And what we are trying to do through the passage of this bill is to expand what we are doing in the financial services sector. Madam President, this is a very forward-looking administration. And of course, since COVID-19 visited, we have been trying our utmost to be as creative and innovative and forward-looking as possible. And of course, we have heard it amplified here on this side as well, that we are trying our utmost to diversify. We have seen what happened during COVID with the tourism industry, and so we are trying as much as possible not to put all our eggs into one basket. Financial services have brought in quite a lot of revenue for us, and this is an administration that continues to try to find ways of raising more revenue. Madam President, running a government calls for money. And of course, we are inundated daily, weekly, monthly, every year in terms of the needs of our population, the infrastructural needs and other needs of the population, Madam President. And we as a government, as a caring government, as a government that put people first, people matter most, we have to ensure that we can respond. We cannot respond without the necessary financial resources. And so this piece of legislation, Madam President, is another way of trying our utmost to continue to raise revenue so that we can continue to respond to the needs of the island, continue to develop the beautiful island of Nevis, And so I want to say from this rostrum that I am in full support of this piece of legislation. I would hope that some of the business that is going to our neighbors could come to the island of Nevis. And so I want to encourage persons, individuals, and businesses out there looking at the limited partnership business to come to the island of Nevis. With this bill, we are trying to also remind investors that Nevis is open for business. And Nevis is the best place on earth that you can come for business. And so, Madam President, as I said, I want to take this opportunity to commend the mover, commend the legal department, and to wish this bill safe passage through this honorable House. And we are trusting and hoping that after this bill, this legislation is passed, that we can see an influx of business coming to Nevis so we can continue to raise our revenue and continue our development of this beautiful island of Nevis. May it please you, Madam President.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Before you take your seat, will we have another contribution from this side? No? The motion has not yet been seconded, so perhaps you can indicate your second.
Yes.
And then
Madam President, while I'm on my feet, I would like to second the motion for the reading of the second reading of the bill.
thank you, Honourable Member. I recognize the member for Nevis 2.
Madam President, I rise simply to conclude the debate. I want to thank the members on the government side and certainly the lone member today on the opposition benches for their contribution. I thought the debate was thoughtful. I believe that across the aisle we recognize that this government continues to make efforts to diversify the local economy. I just want to say, however, Madam President, that governments are elected to lead, and that they have to do. The reason why I started my debate with our national hero, Sir Simeon Daniel, is because I'm well aware that many of the efforts that he would have made, that perhaps now with the benefit of hindsight are deemed to have been good efforts, that those efforts would have attracted criticism at the time. In fact, I sat with someone recently who said that when the Four Seasons Resort was proposed, where it now sits, that there were some on the island, no doubt with their placards, who said that they wanted to continue to catch crabs and pick coconuts at where the Four Seasons now sits. When we recently advised the public that we would be expanding the Vance Amry International Airport, it took only a matter of a week or two before, again, those with placards were at the Vance Amry International Airport. The water taxi facility, the Mondo Track, the Newcastle Fire and Police Station. The truth is that sometimes opposition opposes for the sake of opposing. But government has its job to do. And here we are now. Can any of us with good conscience say that the Four Seasons was not good for Nevis? I would wonder who would raise their hand now. So we missed the crab and the coconut? Or we are grateful for the fact that 1,000 people at Four Seasons have had work, have built homes, educated their children, have something to drive, and the standard of living in Nevis has increased. I say that only to say this. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing. And if Jesus Christ himself was crucified, you're a good Christian, Madam President, I believe you remember the biblical account. Jesus, a man who was blameless, sent by God to save us all, us wicked sinners, was placed next to an old criminal called Barabbas. And Pontius Pilate said to the crowd, which one of them you're going to free? And what the crowd said? Give us Barabbas and kill poor Jesus. Give us Barabbas and kill poor Jesus. So sometimes when you hear the noise, the opposition says they want diversification. But when diversification comes, at every step of the way, the placard comes. So can we take that seriously? I just heard a most erudite expression from the member for Nevis 4. She knew all the ways that the government must now look to diversify the economy. She says, yes, this is good, but according to the good member, this is only diversification, and I'm paraphrasing, within the financial services sector. And so we need to do more. I agree. See how good the parliament is today? Yes. We're agreeing, opposition and government, because I agree that diversification is critical. That's why we have attempted in the height of COVID to form and develop a film industry. That's why we came in here to pass legislation for gaming. That's why we are back to pass legislation for the limited liability bill. That's why we're trying to develop infrastructure in the country to allow business to flow and flourish, like the airport and the water taxi facility at Wally, which based on the last numbers I saw since it's been in commission, we've had over 1 million. But you don't normally hear those kind of numbers in a little place like us, like ours. 1 million people have gone back and forth. Now if you went 4 times in a day, you get counted 4 times. But no, it's still 1 million. But each and every step has been met with placards. So when I hear the cry for diversification, I am forced to wonder, is it sincere? Because we all know that the country has to diversify. We saw how fickle tourism was during COVID. People in this island, Madam President, were struggling. Taxi drivers, hotel workers, restaurant workers, farmers, fishers. People were coming and begging you to buy a lobster from them because the hotels were closed. Borders were closed. We saw it in recent memory, how fickle that industry is. And so we are agreed that diversification is necessary. We saw the country's over-reliance on citizenship by investment. Inside government at the federal level, where I was privileged to serve for 7 years, and outside government in opposition, I have been an advocate for diversification. Every budget address, we must diversify the economy. We talked about cannabis as one such effort to diversify. We've talked about agriculture as one such effort to diversify. And the good member for number 4 mentioned legislation passed in the federal parliament, not here. Not here. I don't know if there's a supposition that that legislation can be debated here. Because as I saw my good friends protesting as we came to the chamber, one of them said, repeal the SSZ. I said, well, how is this house going to repeal SSZ? SSZ wasn't passed here. So I don't know who wrote that sign, but they need to carry that sign to Bastille, Church Street, not Hunkins Drive, because we can't repeal the SSZ in here. We never pass it in here. But I make the simple point that every single effort to expand, to progress, to diversify. The good member opposite actually said that tourism, what's the words? You said you write them down. Tourism was not progressing. Now I'm paraphrasing. It's not expanded much. Tourism has not expanded much. In my last press conference, I believe, I was able to say to the island of Nevis that as of September, forgive me, as of August, we had already equaled our revenue from the Tourism and Development Levy that we had for all of 2024. And if you had August, it means you have September, October, November, and December still to come. But yet we hear tourism has not progressed much. But let us assume for the moment that that is accurate, that tourism has not progressed much. Well, why would anybody have a placard to fight a project that is intended to leapfrog the island and the tourism sector, to take Nevis to the next level of development? So you have to ask the question, is it just words or are people really serious? And I feel I'm in good company when I put myself in the company of Sir Simeon, the national hero. I sat at his feet, you know. A national hero. Sat at his feet and learned at his feet. All my years, he taught me. And one of the things that he taught me was courage, even in the face of the naysayers. Because at the end of the day, making noise don't advance this country one iota. Cannot help us one iota.
Honourable Member, lower your volume with the interruptions.
Waving placards cannot advance this country. Same 6 people. Every time. Same placard. 5. And you ask the question, what is this all about? What? Because the country has to move, Madam President. That's why we come in here, you know. That's why we bring this legislation. The country has to move. Some people, you see, bread already butter. Even the crust, already butter. 2 sides and the crust. So as far as they're concerned, they don't really care if young people find work. They don't really care what happens in Nevis. They care about power. And I'm asking the question, power to do what? When I look outside, I see a group of folks, and I said to myself, they have already lived their lives. All of them. I don't have the board paper, but I know all of them over 70. Retired and have lived their lives. What about the young people in Nevis? That's why we're here, you know. Madam President, lest you scold me for going off topic. That's why we're here. Bring it right back. We're here to debate legislation so that our young people, our lawyers, our accountants, our office managers, those who are corporate secretaries, our young people can have an opportunity in this country. You have too many people who are retired are seeking to block and obstruct the progress and advancement of this island because they've done, their life is... Man, the easiest thing to do is when you're swinging in your hammock and singing Kumbaya. What about those 6 farmers that are going to be coming out? This legislation has come to help them. 5 farmers, young college graduates. So that is the problem that I have. A whole heap of noise and no solutions. So when I hear the arguments today about diversification and we must do this and we must do that and we must look at this, I assure this House and this island that whatever measure this government brings, the same placards don't come out. So ask yourself, are we serious about development and progress? Madam President, I'm not here to suggest that this bill is perfect. I am fairly certain that as we learn and as we grow and as we innovate and as the industry speaks to us, we will come back and amend and keep making sure that we're meeting the concerns of the industry to make us fit for purpose. But what I'm prepared to say, and proudly, that this island is building something. We are creating something. Not for us. The honorable senators are still young. Good member for number 1, youngish. But the rest of us. Madam President, the truth is that when we come here and we engage, and I believe and I feel very passionate about it, because we have to be imagining a Nevis, not for today, but a Nevis for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And that's why I mentioned Sir Simeon, because when he was putting in place a financial services sector back in 1984, I don't believe he was thinking about himself. He was trying to put something in place so that we who are here today can say, with the benefit of 41 years, look what financial services has come to. Look what it has done, where 3,000 plus companies are being registered in a year, and we're hopeful that that will go. What if he had only looked at the placards and said, repeal the Nevis Business Corporation Ordinance? Oh, foreigners going to come in and go take over. Nevisians going to get run out of Nevis. What if those types of sentiments? What if when in 1989, when Four Seasons came and the man who catching crab said he wanted to catch a crab, and the then Premier had said, Lord, let the man catch a crab. And all today we'd have still been catching crab, but our people would not have been working. The island would not have been progressing. Leadership requires us to lead. And that is as much as I could say on the matter, and I believe that this legislation today is yet further evidence, Madam President, of a government that is prepared to lead, to listen, yes, but ultimately to lead, because leadership requires decisions to be made in the best interests of our people. And sometimes, I will end with this, sometimes, you know, Madam President, I'm not sure you have ever been in that situation, but sometimes, you know, we don't ourselves recognize what's in our best interest. Happens all the time. That what we feel is the right way to go, and we are convinced that that is the right way to go, in fact, might not be in our best interest. And equally, the direction that we are so clear we ought not to go should be in our best interest. And you know how I know that? I was over at the water taxi pier at Wally recently, and there was a whole bevy of members from the opposition going down to sink it. Heels and ties and jackets. And I said, God is good. Because if it were up to them, there would never have been that Wally water taxi facility. But we proceeded, because we are government, and we said, this is a good idea. Now look how many people use it. How much business has come from it. Companies over there, boating companies. A young lady I was on a boat the other day, a young woman in a non-traditional role, captain on one of the boats. That's what government does. Creates opportunity for people. Allows our people to progress and develop and grow. You can't do that if you are frightened over placards. And I for sure know that no placard can frighten me once I'm assured that what I'm seeking to do is for the benefit not only of us who are here today, but those who are yet to come. I wish this bill safe passage, Madam President.
Thank you, honourable members. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Nevis Limited Partnership Bill 2025 be read a second time. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for the formation of limited partnership in the island of Nevis and provide for matters relating thereto and connected therewith.
Thank you. The bill has been read a second time. House will move into committee stage.
Part 13, Section 93 to 96.
The question is that Part 13, Sections 93 to 96 form part of the bill. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 12, sections 83 to 92.
The question is that Part 12, Sections 83 to 92 form part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 11, sections 75 to 82.
The question is that Part 11, Sections 75 to 82 form part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 10, sections 69 to 74.
The question is that Part 10, Section 69 to 74 form part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 9, sections 60 to 68.
So 65, we're going to change paragraph H to subsection 2. And then number this following section as subsection 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's also the suggestion about the annual financial report. Yeah, I don't think it's covered. But I don't think it's necessary. No? Oh, I don't think it's necessary. Alright. Oh, we have as well at 65 1B. Should that be an limited partnership agreement or any? Any. Those will be the two corrections. Madam President, let me see. Yeah.
And removal of the comma at the end of B.
Below as a comma where, yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, you want to put Part 9 again? That's the extent of the amendments?
Yes.
The question is that Part 9, Sections 60 to 68 with the amendments stand part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Section 8,
Part 8.
Part 8, sections 47 to 59.
The question is that Part 8, Sections 47 to 59 form part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 7, sections 42 to 46.
The question is that Part 7, Sections 42 to 46 form part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 6, sections 30 to 41.
The question is that Part 6, Sections 30 to 41 form part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 5, sections 27 to 29.
The question is that Part 5, Sections 27 to 29 form part of the bill. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 4, sections 15 to 26.
So we'll change it to section 15. 15.1 should say any person acting through a registered agent may form a limited partnership under this ordinance.
Thank you.
Is there anything further?
The question is that Part 4, Sections 15 to 26, as amended, form part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Section 3,
Part 3.
Part 3, Sections 11 to 14.
The question is that Part 3, Sections 11 to 14, form part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 2, Sections 9 and 10.
The question is that Part 2, Sections 9 and 10, form part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Part 1, Sections 1 through 8.
Emergency condition.
Could it, the quotes and the italics should be out.
Let's remove the quote. Oh, okay, so just the elements
Yes.
without the embellishment. Okay. Anything further?
The question. Thank you. The question is that Part 1, Sections 1 to 8, as amended, form part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause forms part of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the short title forms part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, that's it, right? Thank you. House resumes. I recognize the member for Nevis 3. Nevis 2, sorry.
Madam President, I would like to report that the bill shortly entitled Nevis Limited Partnership Ordinance Bill 2025 has gone through the committee stage with some amendments, and I move that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Nevis 3.
Madam President, I rise to second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Nevis Limited Partnership Bill 2025 be read a third time and passed. Ordinance after it's passed. Yes, yes, please. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Nevis Limited Partnership Bill 2025 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for the formation of limited partnership in the island of Nevis and provided for matters relating thereto and connected therewith.
Thank you. The bill has been read a third time and passed.
Adjournment.
I recognize the member for Nevis 3.
Madam President, I rise to move a motion for the adjournment of this Honourable House. Sign and die.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Nevis 1.
Madam President, I rise to second the motion on the adjournment of this Honourable House. Madam President, permit me to say congratulations to you as being one of the 3 reps to sit on the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Committee. I believe, Madam President, that your leadership of this Honourable House have certainly put you in good stead for that position. So I want to wish you all the very best, Madam President, in your new role as one of 3 members who sits on that committee. Certainly want to wish you all the very best. Madam President, you indicated that the member for Nevis number 5 was absent because she was unwell. Certainly want to use this rostrum and this platform to wish her a very speedy recovery. While we may be on opposite side, Madam President, I believe that we still certainly wish each other well-being and good health. So I certainly want to wish you, Madam President, a speedy recovery. I want, Madam President, to join with you and certainly this Honourable House to offer my condolences to the family of Sir Edmund, our 3rd Governor General. I believe, Madam President, that he would have made a significant contribution to the development of these 2 beautiful islands. And I believe that his passing would have left a void, one in the financial sector and certainly on the political landscape of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I want to wish his family my deepest condolences as the nation remembers, as the nation reflects, and as the nation consider his contribution, Madam President, that he would have made to St. Kitts and Nevis. I also want to offer my condolences to the Hunkins family, a name that is very renowned here on the island of Nevis. We are sitting in this parliament on the name after an illustrious son of that family. And I hope, Madam President, while they mourn the loss of their loved one, Annette Hunkins, that we will also reflect on the contribution that that family would have made to the island of Nevis. I hope that they can remember their loved one with fond memories, and the whole of Nevis, Madam President, would remember the contribution that that family would have made to the island of Nevis and certainly to the development of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis as well. Madam President, I want to join with you and the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis to wish our citizens a happy 42nd anniversary of independence. I believe that we are still very much a young nation and we still have much to strive for. I want to wish, Madam President, our citizens the very best as we reflect on this 42nd anniversary of independence. And I hope that while we reflect on the theme, strive to sustainable future, independence 42, that we can also remember what our motto is, country above self. And as the leader of this government would have indicated, that as a government, we are here to lead, we are here to make decisions. Sometimes those decisions may not be popular, but at the end of it, Madam President, we can continue to remember that our motto is country above self, and as we strive to sustainable future. Madam President, with those very brief words, I want to say that it was good to be here as we contributed to another pillar in the development of our beautiful island. May it please you, Madam President.
Thank you. Honourable Member. At this time, before I put the question in relation to the adjournment, we will stand and take the 1 minute moment of silence for our former Governor General. That time starts now. Thank you. You may be seated. Now the question is that this Honourable House stands adjourned. Signed aye. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House stands adjourned.